Welcome to SEC Football Live, Week 5, Week 4 edition. That is Stephen Godfrey. I'm Braden Gall, and how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good to see you too,
writing out
man.
notes.
Yeah, we're going to talk Georgia and Bama, of course, today. Georgia and Alabama will be on the show. We will talk about Alabama.
Small affair taking place.
Versus Georgia. It will happen. We will discuss it. So
tiny football game.
I have a question for you about Mizzou. I have a question for you about Ole Miss, Kentucky. I have a question for you about the quarterbacks in the Oklahoma-Auburn game. I have a question for you about Tennessee's offense, sort of a philosophical question. We've touched on it before on the show,
okay.
But I know you've always sort of alluded to this offensive championship upside as it pertains to Josh Heupel's offense. So we'll get to some of that a little bit later on the show as well. So there's plenty of stuff to do. We'll start with sort of the NIL chaos that's taking place, as we should have all predicted. A player on a hot team decides to take a break until he gets his payment in the middle of the season. It was going to happen, NCAA, your fault. We'll get to all of that coming up in just a second. However, please thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Turn on the notifications. If you are checking us out on Twitter, please share the show. Hit retweet if you are watching the show. Retweet that. I will call it a tweet or a Twitter, twitter.com. Artist formerly known as X. I'm bullish on the future. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. I'm never going to call it anything else. At Braden Gall, at 38 Godfrey. You can get to him as well on his program, Split Zone Duo, splitzoneduo.com. Go sign up for that. It's a great Substack there with a lot of great content around college football, not just the SEC, but the entire hog, as we say. So make sure you go check that out. However, we got a quick little announcement here on the front end. SEC Football Live for the football season will be brought to you by our amazing and wonderful local sponsor in Nashville, Tennessee, MLRose, local burger and craft beer joint. There are 6 locations all over the mid-state area, Franklin and Mount Juliet and Gallatin, all in. You got 8th Avenue. You're out on Charlotte, which I know that's my home location currently. That's your home location as well. When you play home games, it's at the MLRose on Charlotte. So there you go. Kids love it. The wife loves it. It's a great place to grab burgers, good local beer. They actually have drink specials on Saturdays and Sundays with a brunch menu starting at 10 a.m. Stephen, I don't know if you know what happens on Saturdays in the South at around 10 a.m., but people are looking for a beverage and a nice meal to watch their favorite football team.
My fondest, you asked me before we got on the air. You're like, share it, ML. You know what my fondest Milroe memory is?
Yes,
it's the 8th Avenue location, so the actual the Melrose neighborhood, right?
OG. Yep.
My wife and I celebrated the end of daycare, like the last time we picked our a kid up from daycare, and this was 5 years ago at the MLRose. We went it was like a 4:00 pickup. We enjoyed a happy hour. It was it was walkable to the daycare, and we often look back as like a cherished memory of having a really good happy hour at MLRose at 8th. But Braden, as you know, that math doesn't add up because we celebrated our last daycare day ever, and then we had another kid.
So, I was going to say.
Yeah.
I was wondering. I was like, there's no way you're out of daycare yet.
Correct. I am now. Again, that was less gray hair ago. Yes, but no, many good times at MLRose. Also remember watching several key NFL playoff games there, dude. Melrose, the Melrose location, and before they even opened Charlotte. Watched several Falcons playoff games there. Watched us lose to your Packers in 2010.
Yeah, that was a nice one.
Aaron Rodgers.
You got us back though when you went to the
I was
Super
there.
Bowl.
Yeah, I was there.
After you beat us, that was 2016, I believe. But we're not going to talk about what happened once you got to the Super Bowl. All right,
I was there too for that. Everything was happy and fine.
You're still, people don't forget, chicken and biscuits. They have a great brunch menu. It's really, really good. Not only do they have a great regular menu, but they've got a great brunch menu. And I'm not just that's legit. And of course, one of the menu items that is one of my favorites, the old SEC, appropriate for the show we are on today. So you can go watch SEC football while eating an SEC, while listening to SEC Football Live in your eardrums, in your ear pods there. So go check them out, man. Really, truly a great company, great locally owned business that cares about their neighborhoods and their communities. And if you're in Nashville and you want to watch the game Saturday or Sunday, great drink specials, great menu, parking actually pretty solid at every location. So if you live around Nashville, that's a major plus. And they have really good parking at almost every location. So make sure you check them out. And we do appreciate them supporting us. So you go support them. That's all I got to ask. If you're in Nashville, go support them. It's a great place. It's seriously, if you're in from out of town, you're an Ole Miss fan, you're an Alabama fan, you're a Georgia fan, you're that concentric circle that likes to come.
You're
to
in town to beat Vanderbilt, is what you're saying. If you're in town to beat Vanderbilt.
Also, if you're one of the many alumni who lives in this town in the inner circle, like again, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, that group, and you're in town for celebrating something or having a good time, it's a great spot to go grab lunch or dinner. Kids love it. It's ironic that your story is sort of like bookends on the other direction from one of my favorite memories. My second daughter was born in 2018. When we were sending her to daycare for the first time, my wife
went to the bar.
My wife was like, "I can have a beer now. I can have a beer." And she was, it was like the first drink she had after being pregnant for 9 months. And we went to Melrose on the Charlotte Avenue, sat outside but where the old rusty truck used to be in the little area there.
Mm-hmm.
They have a little fire pit down there now. It's awesome. Great. Go check it out. That's enough of that. So go to Melrose. We love you guys. All right. So if you don't know the name Matthew Sluka, Holy Cross quarterback, transferred to UNLV, and former Missouri, there's my SEC tie, former Missouri head coach Barry Odom doing pretty good work out there. And I'm not really surprised by any of this, and probably there's not a lot of information I need to dole out in terms of the actual stats and facts and figures of the case. According to Sluka and his agent, they are being paid $3,000 a month in NIL money. He was promised $100K. That is, again, according to the player. The school is saying something completely different. My guess is it's probably somewhere in the middle. There's three sides to every story. There's your story, there's your side, there's my side, and then there's the truth. But ultimately, I don't really love the language that's being used about this young individual player. I don't love that he's doing it, but it's not his fault. This is the NCAA's fault. This is the university's writ large fault. I don't know if I'm glad or not glad that it's happening at a place like Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State. I don't know. Are you that surprised by this? Are you surprised it took this long? I'm not surprised by the reaction by people saying, "Oh, this is a quitter. He quits. He quits." Like if any of you humans out there were told you were going to make X by an employer and then we're making Y by an employer, assuming that part of the story is even close to true, all of you would walk away from doing the work and we would all applaud you for it. So what do you make of this whole thing, and how does it apply to the big boys in the SEC?
It's different, although no, it's largely different than the Jalen Rashada saga thing that happened at Florida. I think people are freaking out a little bit because it's happening in real time, meaning that it's happening in UNLV has a game this week, right? Yeah, Fresno. They play Fresno.
Yeah, an important game.
But yeah, Fresno's actually pretty good. And so I think people are freaking out because of that, and I think they're freaking out because it's a good team. But I would also say that some of the things that are happening here are structural deficiencies that probably would not occur at, honestly, just some of the better run NIL collectives that I know about. So top end of the SEC, a couple Big Ten schools I can think about, ACC, etc. You are correct in blaming the NCAA above all. I think you are correct in that there are weird leaks going on. Very weird leaks going on where, and when I say weird, it's like, I'm kind of tongue in cheek here of like, yes, the family's going to come out and tell their side of the story. Of course. The ones that there's one that made me laugh because I actually saw on, shout out to the CFB Reddit, r/CFB. Someone smoked out that some reporter, or I guess a person posing as a reporter in Las Vegas, is actually listed as the PR contact for Brennan Marion, who's the offensive coordinator at UNLV currently. So that's not good to represent oneself quite like that. My guess is that the truth is something of a mixture between, one, an unfulfilled claim by the university to the student athlete, which I hate that term, I shouldn't say, the player. And then, yes, I would also assume that player's representation went to the school and said, "Hey, we want to change the terms." Yeah. So yes, both sides are telling parts of the truth. The problem here, and why Braden is correct in indicting the NCAA above all else, is that legislation could have solved all of this
20 years ago. 20 years ago.
The reason why you're not seeing it now, the reason why you're not going to see it anytime in the future, is because then you would get into labor law, and that is sort of the last horizon.
All right, let me just say this for SEC fans who are just can't wait to talk about Georgia and Alabama. But because here's what I think the lesson is, and I get asked this. I don't know how much you get asked this, but I get asked this a lot, especially during like radio hits or whatever. And that is sort of like, oh, what does it all mean? What is this? How is the sport going to recover or manage or deal with this? And I'm like, look, we are in a moment of chaos in a sport built on a foundation of chaos and corruption and sort of imperfection by definition, some of which makes the sport beautiful. And I think eventually when we get to the music stops, for lack of a better term, and we get to a new governing structure, this temporary window of chaos will end. And we will be in a place where I don't know what the structure looks like exactly. I've got ideas, but it's going to end, and it's going to be a period of time that we look back, like the steroid era in baseball. It'll just be an era. We're like, oh, that was the chaos era of college football. And it affects the SEC and the powers that be, to your point, a lot less than it does these smaller schools who, when they get pilfered, they end up like Kent State and can't compete.
Really, any G5. I mean,
Right.
I know you're using Kent State as sort of like a hyper extended example, but which is fair. But the group of five, I hate when this happens. I saw a piece, I read the piece, and I forgot the author. I want to say it was someone at The Athletic on just the transfer attrition that's happening in the group of five, where just overall quality now is statistically measurable. You can see the decline. Yes, we are in an era. When it ends and how it's defined once it's over, I think are still up for grabs. And everyone acting like this is going to change something, I would remind you, they're going to hold to that wall until the United States government breaches it, because that's how all this happened in the first place. Alston, when the Supreme Court, who I don't know how, I've got a lot of people up here listening who love like legal theory.
I want to talk football.
It's not often that the Supreme Court goes 9-0, and it's going to
true.
take that level of something to then bust through and just say, hey, we're just going to compensate them. Kid NIL contract's going to be 2 years, all really simple things. So I think we will have more chaos before this ends.
Like, what's interesting is if a player of Arch Manning or Nico Iamaleava's caliber did something like this, because I know you said, oh, this is interesting because it's happening in real time and UNLV's good. They're good. They're interesting. They're national.
UNLV.
They're not national headline. If Jalen Milroe did this, it would lead every single national sports talk show. And you could already see all the tropes that would come around talking about a player like Milroe. But ultimately, this is where, like, if you just had and I don't want to use Nico in this, but it's easy because we kind of know his contract, right? Like $2 million a year for 4 years, come to Tennessee. And like, we kind of know that's allegedly that's the contract. And because if that's written by a smart player with smart representation and a smart university with smart representation on above the table where everyone can see the terms of the agreement, there's nothing really to be worried about. There's nothing to worry about if you're Tennessee with Nico. There's nothing to worry about if you're Nico. This is all there's all going to be stuff written into contracts and language that eliminate these types of situations. So I don't think it's going to happen in any real meaningful way at schools in the SEC, for example. But then again, I think in 4 to 10 years I know it's a large window, but I think in 4 to 10 years, we're going to have a brand new governing body and structure with a whole new power structure and a whole new oversight body. And the SEC is probably going to have a heavy hand in that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still going to be, everyone's going to know exactly what's happening, where we are, what you can and can't do. And that'll be the end of the chaos.
If you want a football way of moving this conversation forward, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the Quinshon Judkins decision ultimately plays out. So if you don't know that, Judkins, basically the starting running back at Ohio State, he's platooned a little bit. Starting running back at Ole Miss last year. Those in the know will tell you he asked for a number in the offseason. Ole Miss's NIL collective said, here's your counter number. And then the theory in Oxford was we can replace him in the aggregate. So think like Moneyball, right? And then the theory in Columbus was we've got that kind of cash laying around and we need that sort of extra oomph in terms of a running threat with the new structural changes that Chip Kelly's bringing, kind of like the way FSU complemented last year, where it's like, okay, now you have a Keon Coleman from Michigan State. So whoever's the difference there is that Ole Miss and Ohio State can see each other in the playoff. Like that would be You want to talk about narrative?
Mm.
NIL will be narrative when those two meet. It's basically a free agency decision. You didn't pay, and
Didn't
this
he
team
announce?
did.
Didn't he announce like 2 minutes after Michigan won the Big Ten championship or the national championship or something like that?
It was, yeah.
It was showing an unprecedented level of understanding of Big Ten rivalry football from an SEC football player is what it was.
The problem is, Braden, just like the UNLV case today, Judkins and his reps, his agents were doing the same thing last year, basically going through the season and saying, hey, we want this, we want more. The if you could just get into a contractual setting, then you and I and everyone listening to this would be like, hey, I signed a 2-year deal. I get this much. When the contract's over, we're done.
All right, we're going to talk Bama, Georgia. Let's talk football. Tennessee Volunteers offense. Go to ML Rose, by the way. Great place to watch games, great specials. Everything's great. Just great. It's great. Everything is awesome. Tennessee Volunteers offense, and there's two. We'll get to the Oklahoma side of this equation and sort of what it means going into the Auburn game, which because Auburn has questions too after their showing, and a nation's leading 14 turnovers for Hugh Freeze's offense that's supposed to have made a lot of progress this season. But Tennessee, like, it's how they played the game that I'm so impressed with, their ability to manage. They talked all summer about sort of learning how to win different stylistic fights, and we saw that they had to learn how to do that a little bit last year when Joe Milton wasn't able to do what Josh Heupel wanted him to do. Nico can do most of that, but they didn't have to this week, and that's what was interesting. They knew they could win this game if they slowed the clock down, were patient, ran the football, and played the consistently good defense. They end up knocking Jackson Arnold out of the game. I don't think it's all his fault, but he wasn't good. But Seth Luttrell's not been good on offense. The play calling wasn't good. The play design wasn't good. The offensive line is terrible, and the receivers are banged up. Like, there's not a lot to like about the Oklahoma offense. The Oklahoma defense, I thought, played very, very well. But I think the more interesting conversation, I think you used the word on one of your episodes this week, splitzoneduo.com. I think you said something about the commentary on this style of offense and its championship upside. I'm sort of adding in a few words there. But that's essentially you and I had a long talk about this on this show like 3 weeks ago. And ultimately, one of the things we landed on, I think, was if you've got an elite defensive line and you can win the line of scrimmage battle on offense, you don't have to lean on the tempo and the speed and the pace and the 48 points a game and the splits and all the stuff that the offense does. You become a more balanced football team. Is what we saw sort of the natural progression and evolution of a Heupel Baylor offense trying to learn to compete at a championship level? Is that what we saw against Oklahoma?
Well, they had the capability to do it. I think that's the important thing to discuss here, meaning that at its best, the Bryles Baylor machine didn't have a defense like this Tennessee team does. At its best, Lane Kiffin, we'll
maybe
there.
This year. Maybe
we'll get there. Yeah, we're going to talk about that soon, but maybe this year Ole Miss has like a comparable defense. By and large, this particular offshoot, this sort of like subsection of the Bryles tree offense has never had complementary defense quite like this. Not at this talent level. Now, I want to be really clear here in case somebody out there is listening who's like a scheme head. There are elements of this offense that were incorporated by Alabama, that were incorporated by Ohio State, incorporated by top tier championship caliber programs. This is more, we aren't influenced by them. We're like a cover band. Like what Heupel does is so directly off that tree. It's a little bit different. So it's much more specific. To take it back to the Oklahoma game for a second, I think it was a statement about capability and about being a well-rounded program. And then also they just played a lot of like if you're playing cards and you're holding face cards, but there's a 5, just play a 6. And I thought that's what a lot of the second half was, honestly. I thought that there was really no need to commit to bombing them away. Now, that's not to say, I'm not trying to imply that Tennessee was in total control. Oklahoma caused some problems there, and I think Tennessee very wisely didn't try and overextend themselves on offense. Specifically, they didn't want to create turnovers from short fields. They knew that, okay, we'll give the ball back to you. You're struggling tremendously for all the reasons that Braden just said. I think the injuries on the outside at receiver especially are as damning as their inability to determine a quarterback.
They went full on Iowa State Jim Heacock. They were like,
I mean, they have to.
You're going to have to play 12 plays to get anywhere close to the end zone. And Oklahoma couldn't do it other than that one time at the end of the game.
But that's my point. It was ugly. It wasn't the most watchable game. When they hit the one touchdown with a safety bit wrong, that was the only time you saw sort of that Heupel offense was the one touchdown pass, I think, in the second quarter. And otherwise, we're seeing something now we haven't seen from Tennessee or Heupel, which is like, all right, we'll win the game on defense. Hey, by the way, we're on the road. It's the SEC.
Top 20
we're on the
opponent.
road. They have a really good defense. Let's get the hell out of here with a win. No one gives a shit in 2 weeks. No one's going to care.
Nobody cares. Josh Wright says it's something Kirby or Saban would do. They eliminated the only way the opponent was going to win. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. So here's a clunky analogy. Yes. Let me see if you kind of, this is going to be, again, this will be a little clunky, but it just sort of hit me, and I'm curious because it felt like Tennessee as a program has been like an immature toddler for a long time until Heupel and Danny White and Donnie Plowman got there. And they went from like toddler to young adult, and then from like young adult to like teenager. And then the Alabama game happened, and all of a sudden they got their driver's license and they like were of age to vote. And like they became a mature-ish young adult. This felt like an adult program move. This felt like they went from teenager, college kid to like a young professional who's actually in the workforce working. And again, it's a clunky analogy, but it feels like it's been growing up and maturing as a program. And that on Saturday, that is something like a dad does. Like a dad coaches a game like that, where it's like, no, we've got to win the game. This is how we're going to do it. This is the smartest way to do it. We're going to take the path of least resistance, and we're going to be smart. And it's very mature. It's very dad-like. And I call Josh Heupel Coach Dad for a reason. Like, he just reminds me of Coach Dad. And I think that resonates with his players, but I don't know. I know it's a clunky analogy. It just kind of hit me, but it felt like the Alabama game was a big developmental step in their maturation process. And they've sort of been seeking out the next step since that win. And Saturday felt like sort of a sign to everybody else, like, oh, hey, we might be in a different place now. We can win games like this because we want to. And
let's say all of that maturity, we're credulous about all of that, okay? And that's the way things are running in Knoxville now. The logical extension of that is to then go down the stretch and say, you know what? We're better than every opponent on our schedule except for 2. We might be even with them. We might be lesser than. And we'll know pretty soon. I think we might know after this weekend which one.
I was going to say, we don't know which one yet, but we'll know Saturday.
But even if we are lesser than 2.
It's Alabama.
And even if we can't beat 2, a 10-2 program is going to the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
I know
unless you're Missouri.
That may not fire up and excite Vol fans who have, hold a historic rivalry with Alabama, although I do think it's completely overblown and ridiculous. And I know that you're tired of losing to Georgia, whatever. Okay. There's a shocking amount of maturity in Knoxville. They're playing the long game. I would play along with them. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they're going to pack it in those games. They're totally going to try and win those games. I'm just saying that, like, your less than great scenario still puts you in national title contention. What more could you ask for? And if you lose, you're going to get a rematch. And it's very hard to beat the same team twice in college football. Extremely hard.
And while Atlanta is close to Athens, the second game will not be, in fact, in Athens. If they had to play a second game, it would be in Atlanta. Maybe, yeah. Or, I guess in theory, well, no, because if Georgia wins the SEC championship, they're not hosting a home game. Just one of those sweet rewards you get for being a champion. You don't get to host a home game.
What a wonderful, smart system.
What a weird thing to say out loud. Jackson Arnold on the other side of this. I mean, look, Tennessee, I think, has answered every question we could have asked so far. And ultimately, the game, honestly, Stephen, the game happened exactly as we discussed. They are better at quarterback. They are better along the offensive line. They have a more sound system that has a much higher floor. The defensive line is going to eat, and they're going to terrorize the quarterback for Oklahoma. And Tennessee's just a slightly better team at almost everything, and that's what we saw. So it really wasn't that surprising. It was sort of I was surprised when Josh Heupel let the gas off the pedal and then said so after the game. Like, that was sort of like a sign of, okay, it's a little different type of program now.
And that was just the risk aversion that we've talked about. So yeah, it makes sense.
By
the way,
those
things, although I agree with everything you just said about Oklahoma, I'll take them 100% over Auburn this weekend.
So, okay, let me ask you about the quarterback, though, because that's what I'm curious about. Like, I really don't think – I thought last weekend for Oklahoma was more about the offensive coordinator is not doing a great job right now. Seth Luttrell is going to get a lot of scrutiny over the course of the next few weeks. The offensive line's a total dumpster fire. You can't fix that in college football. You can't really fix that in season at any level of football. Mm-hmm. The receivers are banged up, and Tennessee is really, really good. To me, that's a function of all of that. Was Jackson Arnold any good on his own? No. Can Hawkins maybe make some plays with his legs? And that's what you need to do against the Tennessee defense. reset the confidence clock for young Mr. Arnold. Sure, I get it. I don't know if I believe in making the switch right now. I'm a little torn on that. Where are you at on the switch?
I think
it just worked out so well for Auburn, you know.
Well, there's a case study for every way to look at this right now. So you have Texas A&M struggles against Bowling Green, but in the course of struggling, they get the reps for Reed that he probably needs. Kind of has to happen going back into conference play. So there's one strategy, right? Which is not too dissimilar to what I think Texas is doing by just like because Arch had what, two picks against ULM. Like,
let him play.
Right. Or do you juggle? Do you go hot hand fallacy, which is sort of what Auburn is trying to do? Maybe.
Baby Billy.
There's no right answer to this. The right answer is that you have a quarterback locked in place like Missouri, like Tennessee, like Ole Miss, and you ride the best player through. The portal has kind of prevented this. This is happening all over college football right now. You're having incumbent starters from other teams become your penciled starter at the new transfer school, and then a young guy's better.
Talking about
because
Florida.
you're constantly so I was headed to Florida. The inexplicable situation is what's going on at Florida, because if you look at Mississippi State and everything that happened in that game, is Billy Napier not aware? Maybe he's not. He coached that game specifically on offense with no urgency whatsoever towards his employment future. And so what I mean by that is, are you going to sit here and tell me that Graham Mertz? Well, okay, pause. If you sit here, Braden, and tell me that Graham Mertz is the solution going down the stretch into conference play, you're fired now. Go now. Get out now. Okay. We know that Lagway is the superior player with the higher upside. And yes, I am sure his decision-making matrix is not as rounded out.
Yeah, of course.
He's a young guy. Why not use a historically bad Mississippi State program who's going to get worse because they lost Chapin? Why not use that game to let Lagway just get it out? Same thing that A&M did. Same thing Texas is doing. Why? Like, Auburn's situation is bad. It's kind of trademark Hugh Freeze. I think Florida's management system might be worse. So if Oklahoma says, "Hey, you know what, Jackson? This wasn't it." That to me is a better and smarter decision to take it on the chin now. Although they're going to go play Auburn, I really do think they can win that game on defense alone.
But you're saying automatically in 3 games that you can tell he's not it? Like, you think you can do that in 3 games?
I think a lot of people's personnel departments can. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
You don't think it has everything?
I don't know if he is. I'm not trying. I'm not
Okay.
trying to be the media guy who acts like he can work on a coaching staff. I'm just telling you that yes, that time frame is not insane for other people to make those kind of decisions. No, it's not.
Okay. All right. Well, so on a lesser note or a similar note, the thing I was thinking about while you're talking through this strategic decision making by the coaches to sort of either roll with the young guy and throw everything at him and see how they what they learn and how they move forward and how they progress is sort of, I was thinking about Arkansas and how Talon Green is just sort of like out there now. They don't have as many options. They don't have a second choice really, but
right.
Basically it looks like Sam Pittman pulled Bobby Petrino into a meeting and was like, do whatever it takes with Talon Green. Just throw, like, I don't care if he's decapitated. I don't care. Like, just let him go because he's our best chance to win games. Like he's going to make some mistakes. It might throw a pick 6 against Oklahoma State when we're up 14-0. But at the end of the day, he's also going to make some crazy plays with his legs. He's going to make players miss, and he's going to give us a chance to win. And even though we didn't play a particularly great football game, we're going to go on into Auburn and win a game.
It's It's very likely that if Arkansas were to win this weekend, I could see a survival scenario for Sam Pittman, which I did not think was crazy. Possible.
I don't either. But that game is crazy. A&M Arkansas generally very wild.
Neutral site, annoyingly so. Neutral site.
Yeah.
I still want to bet on what you and I have been optimistic about with the new world A&M of like all the flash and nonsense is gone. It's going to be very practical. I've often referred to Mike Elko as an FFC. You can guess what the first F stands for. The second F is football coach.
Is it fucking?
It is. I didn't know what our swear filter was on the show.
It's fucking, isn't it? Is it fucking?
Fucking football coach. I like what they're doing.
My daughter yesterday was like, "Dad, I think I know the F word." And I'm like, "No, you don't."
Did she?
She's like, "Is it freak?" And I'm like, "Yep, you got it."
Yep. Oh, dang, you got us. Dang.
Damn, my bad.
You would think that they could just humble Petrino's offense this weekend. You would think A&M would be fine. I feel like I'm in the minority opinion by saying this. I like A&M in this game.
Oh, I do too.
Okay, I don't.
I think it's a bad matchup for Arkansas. I think it's a bad matchup.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. But also, like, I don't understand. Arkansas has been the beneficiary of a lot of, like, I think, surprised love early on. But when you scratch it, that Oklahoma State game is just a basket of weird. Auburn turned the ball over 5 times, but still drove a lot on them. I don't
think the Oklahoma State game is going to age well for Arkansas.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. Especially if I think K-State does what they're going to do this weekend.
I got Kansas State minus 4.5.
Yeah.
Well,
if only because K-State can't have that bad a game twice.
No, they can't. Look, here's the matchup. Like, what you need to beat Taylen Green is a really fundamentally sound, proper defensive front. And if you want to line up with athletes and try to out-athlete a Texas A&M defensive front, I don't think you can do it. I think what we saw from Notre Dame in week 1 was we're gonna poke and prod, we're gonna test, and then in the late third quarter, we're gonna find the blocking scheme that works, and we're going to try to out physical you, and that's hard to do against A&M. It just is. Notre Dame's one of the few teams that maybe has the people to do it, and it was also game 1 of the Elko era. But I think Elko's
the offense
skills
wasn't straight then.
Yeah, I think Elko's defense, his personnel, and his scheme and his coaching, the FFC, I think that is a bad matchup for a Bobby Petrino, Taylen Green sort of. It's not. I don't want to say flash in the pan because that sounds like an insult. It's just this sort of like they've caught the momentum and they're flying high right now, and it's gonna they can beat a lot of bad circus teams like Auburn with that kind of system. Circus team, I think Oklahoma State might fall into that same category. These teams that just have like sort of crazy shit happening behind the scenes, on the field, off the field, whatever. But you can't line up and just beat like a real fundamentally sound, good football team like that has better players than you. And I like A&M, but this is a crazy game and weird stuff happens. So you never know. I don't know what to expect I don't know. Like, what do you make out of Auburn in general across the board with like the quarterback decisions, the receivers not dropping passes, the offensive line's not blocking, like all the things that I thought that they improved around Peyton Thorne and or insert quarterback here. None of that stuff's worked either. And then Hugh Freeze goes, shockingly, Hugh Freeze goes out and does the classy move and blames all the players for what's happening.
Before saying that they would beat Sam Pittman 9 out of 10 times. This is 101 basic coach shit. Like, this is what you learn when you're an FCS head coach. Like, the isms not to employ in your post game nonsense talk. This guy, like, I don't want to get back on a soapbox.
Can we do a bingo? Can we play a bingo game the rest of the year?
I mean, I have a history with this guy, but like,
I know.
What can I do every week other than just say I told you so to these people? I'm serious, Braden. I will say this. You know what surprised me is how unsurprising it is. If we had a bingo card, every square would be full, and it's September 25th.
Well, here's the thing. I was in the same boat of like, I don't think this is as surefire a home run hire as everybody thinks it is. No. Like, and that's nothing to do with the off the field stuff. That's nothing to do with the character stuff or the sliding into DMs or paddling young girls in private rooms in high school. Like, it has nothing to do with any of that stuff. That this is just on the field. The guy loses games he's not supposed to. On the field, the team is chaotic, and it's always been that way. And so here's what I'm surprised at, that the unraveling is happening as quickly as it is within the first half of the second season. And I agree with you. It is not a surprise. It's just a surprise that it's happening so fast. But if you told me, again, there's my story from SEC Media Days. This is my only anecdote from Hugh Freeze. There's only one coach. There's only one coach in all 16 teams that was in Dallas-Fort Worth at SEC Media Days that was down at the bar drinking beer with us. You can guess which one it was. Well, I can't wait. Hang on. It wasn't. I don't know if it was a beer. I don't know. I don't remember.
People ask me this. I've been asked this on every social platform and texts and everything. Like, what do you think about his chances? Auburn's in such a particular way because if you go back to market quickly, then it's going to look as bad for Auburn as it does for Freeze. They want him right now to be very successful. I should say they want him very badly to be successful, just so they don't look as insane as they're sort of tagged as being, meaning they really don't want to go to market. They would have to be forced to go to market this year. Now, what does forced to go to market look like?
3-9? I don't know.
I think sub 5 wins and a loss to Diego again. I don't know. I mean, I'm not joking. I'm not joking, man.
Diego Pavia 2-0 with 2 different teams.
Imagine if Pavia. You imagine if he goes back in there because it's on the Plains. I made a joke on Twitter. I was like, I might have to attend that game, and everyone's like, "You coming down?" I was like, "Oh no, I'm not doing that."
It would be fun.
But could you imagine that happening 2 times? Yes, I think that would be.
It's the most Auburn thing in the world, though, to go 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. Like that's just that's how they work.
Okay, but then there's a whole other conversation we get to have. Let's say you do it. Let's say you're so angry, and I'm so right, which I am.
Yellowwood.
Who are you hiring?
Yeah, nobody. I mean, Auburn can always hire some.
I mean, it's an SEC job, but my God, could you imagine walking into that?
No, it's tough. It's tough.
Buying a house and the realtor's like, "Hey, this house has been on the market 7 times in 9 years." Oh, okay. So there's a ghost.
Maybe they should. Gene Chizik is walking around the backyard.
Blood comes out of the walls. Okay, I got you.
Oh man, I remember working with Gene Chizik on satellite radio after he was let go. This is years later, and he's just like he never moved, like he never left. Ironically, talking about selling houses, he never left because his kids were in school and he didn't want to get them out of school, which I totally respect. That's actually a really I got a lot of respect for that. One of the nicer guys, but like I was just always like, you stayed in Auburn.
He didn't care,
and I think the ring changes.
Yeah, I was like
getting fired.
Think about it years later. Gus didn't get you a ring. And now look at it.
Now he's running the ball 59 times a season.
If Harsin were to stay, that would have been different.
That'd have been weird. Yeah. I want to ask you about Mizzou and Kentucky Ole Miss and a couple other things here. Harold Perkins being out for the year, big blow for LSU's defense. Defense we already mentioned has got some difficulty with the scheme. But I want to get to
we're doing the defense
with the football. I want to talk Georgia and Alabama, though. We got to do it here. And I know you got a big story in the Washington Post about this. Mm-hmm. And look, I've long believed that in the short term, Kalen DeBoer, because of his skills and talents and track record with the current skills and talents of the roster, Jalen Milroe being very good, they're having a very young, talented sort of group of skill players around him, an offensive line that's going to be better this year, a running game that's going to be more creative this year. They have the explosive plays have been there for this Alabama team on offense. Defensively, they also have a bunch of guys that fly around at linebacker in particular. I thought that if there was going to be a degradation of the program post Saban under Kalen DeBoer, that it would take time. You could see an 11-1, 10-2, 10-2, 9-3 sort of thing under DeBoer, in which case 3 years from now we wake up and we go, what's happened to the program? I don't think that's going to happen in year one, and it doesn't appear to be that way so far. So to me, if I look at which defense is playing better, which quarterback is playing better, which offensive scheme do I trust to be creative and innovative and dynamic in this game, which offensive line is better, all of the check marks right now kind of go to Bama. They're playing at home. I don't like that I like all of those parts for Bama because I don't like the spot against Georgia. I don't like, you know what I mean? I don't like we just played one of our worst offensive games on the road. We're starting to come into the middle of the season where we start to unveil some things on offense. If you're Georgia, we got dropped from 1-2, and Kirby Smart's going to use all of this to push his team during a bye week. Georgia normally responds to this stuff very well. Those are two competing interests in my head. Where should I go with them? I just laid a lot on there. I got you.
Okay. I've prided myself my entire career of like, we're not supposed to be, I think media who pass themselves off as like these just sort of perpetual all-knowing wizards. No, we don't know is the answer. This is evenly matched. There are way too many variables at play to determine a constant, in my opinion. I could talk about Georgia and on offense that they've just either, well, in the case of Kentucky, sort of been made to be simplistic. I don't think they have a downfield threat like they used to. I tend to want to throw all of the Clemson game out.
Why? Because of Clemson?
Because of week 1, because of Clemson, because of like after Kentucky, to think about the offensive side of that game. Yes, I tend to want to look at it as an outlier. Does that make sense?
The Clemson second half.
The Clemson Georgia game in general, the offensive effect of what the offensive sort of explosion that Georgia had.
And really, it was only the second half. So
right. I'm always suspicious of Georgia's offense in general. You know, my post column was basically, it's like taking a very large educated audience who's very ignorant about the sport and sort of getting a very quick summation. So if you watch this show, I didn't tell you anything you didn't know, but I'm more, it's like, hey, this guy was 7 degrees in DC's Beltway, but doesn't, they only kind of follow Michigan. Like that's sort of my audience. But
the way I follow Michigan is, like,
oh, we get a ton of those.
It's a bunch of Jane Costins.
Shout out to Jane. Walk into a post comment section. It's like being in a funhouse mirror. I think the best way to describe this to me is that there's old Alabama, which is Georgia, and that has to do with the whole Kirby Smart wants to play like it's 2012, put you in the slow cooker defense. There's new Alabama, which is actually Austin, Texas. Okay.
Yeah.
Post Kiffin, Sark, offensive minded. Now, what they share, obviously, is that they have immaculate Saban blueprints applied to big war chests, really good recruiting areas, maybe the two best states in the country now. Florida has fallen off in recent years. Okay. So where's Alabama? What is the school in Tuscaloosa? It is okay to say we don't know yet. There are a lot of variables at play. The positive to me is still an off-season topic, which is the fact that the NIL group, who, at least what I was told, felt a little flat-footed after Saban left, meaning they did not feel up to speed with some of the competing NIL interests of national title contenders. The Saban discount was a real thing. It was talked about for years. So to keep Milroe and most of the pieces there, massive advantage. DeBoer is a highly qualified, successful coach at every level. This is not some redneck second place job. This is, if you look at jobs on a blind item resume, it has resources, budgets, buildings, staffing, etc., that compare to no one else. Like Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Texas. Right?
There's a reason the two greatest dynasties in the history of the sport happened at the same place. It wasn't an accident.
Okay. And that actually touches more on the intangible buy-in of the place. All right. But right now, we don't know what Alabama is because, look, Saban himself, and I launched a podcast this week, Who Killed College Football, and it really seeks to answer what Saban said to Congress this spring, which is the sport I know no longer exists. Okay, so what do we do? What is this sport that we're doing right now? Alabama doesn't know either. I think they're still in the, so in NASCAR, like you get behind your teammates and you're drafting, right? You get that added boost. And that's how I see Kalen DeBoer going into this game. There's no reason to have a referendum on Kalen DeBoer, lose or win after this. This is Saban's roster, and that's fine. It's a damn good roster. I think he's an excelsior play caller. I think he's one of the best.
Yeah, he's great.
Like those Washington games were crazy good in how he positioned Penix and those guys, Romaduze
and the stuff. And you haven't seen half of the shit he wants to run so far on tape at Alabama.
This is okay. And this is the other thing I was getting at. This game, you're gonna be introduced to both teams. I'm sorry, Clemson. No,
I agree.
This is going to feature things you have not seen at all yet. It's like the season starts on Saturday. So I don't know who's going to win. I don't have a lean. I don't have a way of finding a matchup deficiency because I'm going to be honest. The stuff I don't feel great about, I don't even think they've shown yet, like Georgia downfield.
Right. No, I agree. And what's interesting, and to your point about like, hey, we don't know this stuff. They haven't shown us exactly who they are. It's going to be a great game that we should enjoy. The playoff hanging over all of this means that it could be one of three, maybe two matchups we see this year. But there's also a note that says that doesn't mean it's any less enjoyable for us who are fans watching games as a fan on the couch. It can still be completely, utterly enjoyable to learn as much as you can about both of these teams and to see them in a Like what better? This is what's interesting. Like the NFL, every single week, every single game you play, even the best team against the worst team, is an example and a chance to test yourself for the playoffs. And almost every game is largely about the same. In college football, you get maybe 3 to 5 chances a year to test yourself if you think you're a championship caliber team. Look at Tennessee. We just got done talking about Tennessee. How many real chances are we going to understand what Tennessee really is? Ole Miss and Missouri are in the same boat. Missouri's 3 toughest games are A&M, Oklahoma, and Alabama. And Oklahoma and A&M don't look as good as maybe we thought. So you're going to get Bama as a test. How many times are you really going to learn as much as possible out of 2 teams? And this is one of those great moments where you don't have to make it. It doesn't have to be anything more than just a great football game that we enjoy. Enjoy Milroe, enjoy Beck, enjoy third down play calling. Enjoy it.
Don't build narrative. Don't build the narrative. Just take this game as a sort of platinum level data point. It's different than other games.
Yeah.
You if you're Georgia, this is sort of going to affect how Texas plays you more than you play Texas. If you are Alabama, you might be able to say the same thing for Tennessee, although I think it's a little bit different. Otherwise,
be present.
Yeah. Yes.
Be present.
And
just let it wash all over you.
Maybe you're going to hate what I'm about to say, not you, Braden, but the audience. Maybe you're going to hate it, but loser's not out. Not even close. Not like the loser's very much alive and fine. So sorry, I guess.
And here's the other, but you're not going to get any less out of the 2 teams, players or coaches or fans because they might play again. Like this whole like, oh, it removes value. Like the Texas-Michigan game got, I think, 10 million viewers and is like one of the most watched games of the year and would have been one of the most watched games of last year. Did the value of that game get reduced and people stop watching because there's a 12-team playoff? No, it didn't happen.
I'm interested with Georgia only because if Alabama has some particular kind of success on offense, how do Tennessee and Ole Miss adjust? Because like Georgia's slate's a little rougher, I guess. So if they take the loss here, it's Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Okay.
Georgia's got a much tougher path. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are more better teams taking notes on Georgia in the defensive response.
More good.
Like we could talk about Kentucky and Ole Miss for a second because a lot of people want to say, all right, this is the first week that Ole Miss is going to be tested. I don't think they are. And I think that because of Tennessee, Kentucky's really good at throwing, what do the Brits say? Throw a spanner in the works, like break the machine on pro-style teams.
Georgia.
Exactly. Ole Miss is going to like look at what Heupel's done to Mark Stoops. Ole Miss, I think, is going to be fine.
I will say I went back and rewatched some of the Georgia-Kentucky game just to watch the Kentucky defense and how they were communicating and applying some of their schemes. Like they were not scared over the top. And that was apparent with how they rolled up safeties. They had linebackers that were playing out and jumping on those like those little bang routes, those little bang sevens and stuff. Like they were ready for it. And so we'll see.
What scares you about Georgia deep?
Well, nothing. I agree. So this is ultimately, I do think Kiffin is brilliant at playing geometry, right? He's brilliant at this. Timing and geometry is what he's so good at. And I think he'll be like, they have the personnel and the players to go out and attack Kentucky. We'll get to that in just a second. Cause I want to go sort of like, what are the things you actually want to learn from the platinum data point here, which is, I think, number one, what does Georgia have in its bag down the field with Carson Beck? I think that's absolutely something I want to ask. I want to know.
Offense. Make them play offense.
Right. I also think that's exactly what Kirby's going to do on defense to Jalen Milroe, which is what do we think Jalen Milroe's biggest problem is? Well, it's the intermediate rhythm passing game inside the pocket. Well, what does he do? He designs a scheme that contains the quarterback, keeps him in the pocket, and allows him to throw the football between 12 and 25 yards over the middle, and then let's see if he can do it. And I think he can. I think he will be able to because Kalen DeBoer will put him in a position. But I'm curious what happens there between Kirby and Kalen DeBoer. So
I'm not saying this is like a foolproof thing, but if you look at the NFL talent for Georgia right now, and it replenishes yearly, they can get pressure with 4. They can put at least one of those corners by themselves.
Great safety.
You can do exactly what you said, which is flush him and drop and make him beat you in the middle. I'm not saying the linebackers are bad. I'm just saying it's just NFL rankings.
It's also forcing Milroe to do the thing he does the least.
Yeah.
And that's just good football.
But I do think that conversely, Mo Lindquist and Kane Womack are looking at doing the exact same thing to Carson Beck, who I think is much more of an unknown quantity. I'm just not impressed yet. I feel like I always say this, and then like we have a year where like, yeah, Georgia kicked the shit out of TCU in a title game. I still call him Stetson Bennett Kia for a reason. Like I don't know, man. Like when Arch Manning was visiting Georgia and committed to Texas, did you really think he was going to look at what Kirby was doing on offense and commit to him over Sark? Give me a break.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. Look, we have one listener who thinks that we are just anti-Georgia offense, who's always always yelling at me on Twitter.
I am.
Oh, they evolved under Todd Monk and they changed. And I'm like, well,
and then he left.
And then he left. And then they hired the guy. Now, it doesn't mean Bobo's offense. I also thought Bobo got a bad rap when he left the first time. His last 3 offenses at Georgia were like number 2, number 6, and number 8 in like yards per play in the country. Like they were a very good, very efficient.
Kirby wants it to be 2011 all the time. Like he wants that Alabama. It's like how musically I wish it was 1994. Like, you know what?
You do?
Kirby wants it to be 2011 Alabama, like slow cooker. We run the ball. It's Mark Ingram based offense. That's what he wants.
You still love Dave Matthews Band, is what I'm hearing. You still listen to
mind
DMB.
Dave. I don't mind Dave.
You still listen to DMB, man. Okay, all right.
I don't, but he's a nice fella.
Virginia's having a nice year. All right. Quickly, Ole Miss and Kentucky. I agree that the matchup's bad. The matchup's bad for Kentucky schematically. I agree with that. But you got to admit, though, as a 17, 17-point favorite, it's at home.
Mm-hmm.
This is still because it's not a good test, I don't think, for the Ole Miss defense. I don't think we're going to learn a lot about the Ole Miss defense in this game. But I do think it is a good spot. If you're Kiffin, it's a great spot to put your offense, Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, all these pieces on offense up against a fundamentally sound physical defense and say, look, let's see if we can do it against this team. And that's a good test for us at this point of the season. It does not help them beat Georgia or LSU or all the other best games they're going to play. But it is
I'm laughing because this was supposed to help ramp them up towards LSU. But I think Kentucky, they have South Carolina in between. I think Kentucky will be the best defense they see until the bye week.
South Carolina's defensive front's not bad.
They're not bad. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, but like LSU's getting worse.
Okay. So you're not really worried about Ole Miss and don't think much of the game itself from a data standpoint on Ole Miss.
If we come back next week and we're talking about a low-scoring game, I'd be very interested in diagnosing the how and why there, but I'm not confident that happens. I'm not confident Ole Miss is a title contender either. I just don't think it's this week that they fall apart.
What about the Missouri Tigers? Boston College is one thing. That's a decent, well-coached, physical team along the line of scrimmage. They played kind of a quirky game against Missouri. It was close. Missouri wins. They still win the game, and they still ran the ball very well, and they still have a quarterback and a receiver who are great. The offense sort of got the job done. The defense questions, while they were great statistically through the first few weeks, this was the side of the ball that was losing all the NFL players. And while Eli's done a good job replenishing the cupboard there, it's still Missouri, and it's still harder to do it there than it is at all these other places in the top tier in the SEC and in college football. Just a team finding its way, just a team in Vanderbilt that had a really good game plan, that saw something they liked. How do you read out that? What's the readout on that game for you?
I think it's a good time for them to have a bye because they better work out the sort of like the punishment they're putting on themselves for getting too cutesy early in games. I think that's a problem, specifically with some of their play calling. I don't particularly love the defense either. And they have A&M next week, and they have them in College Station. So
we'll find out.
It's gonna get real serious. And I think by the time you get to Alabama, of these 6 teams that we talk about all the time, they are the lesser.
Well, I had Tennessee making the playoff and Missouri not, but
you got to feel good about that right now.
I do feel good about that right now. So we'll see. Ole Miss is the one that I can't decide, and honestly, I don't know yet. I think they're built like Tennessee. I think they are.
Yeah. Oh, they are. They're just.
But I'm not sure.
You're just not going to know for a while.
I also think Tennessee's defensive line is deeper and built more naturally. Let's call it like those defensive tackles are natural, Steven. You know what I mean?
If you want to watch something this weekend, because I'm the guy who had to watch LSU play Nichols because of my in-laws, you're going to have a repeat. You're going to have a repeat of that game. I think you're about to have a complete, like the same plot sequel to last year with LSU. we are going to be talking about a really, really good Heisman caliber quarterback not being supported by a defense by the end of the season. Fluff Bothwell. Do you know Fluff?
That's the South Al guy. Yeah,
that's the running back. 100+ this weekend. LSU's going to be fine because they're going to score at will.
Future Georgia Bulldog.
Probably. I'm telling you right now, LSU fans are going to come away from like a 17-point win, super pissed off at how their defense played.
What's LSU's schedule in the next like 4 weeks?
Their first serious game of import is in 2 weeks against Ole Miss. I'm not sure if they're if they're into a bye.
I think they get Bama
after South Al. That's after Ole Miss. They have a bye and then Ole Miss. Then they're on the road for a while. Arkansas A&M.
Pull up my handy dandy Athlon Sports magazine while you talk about this.
Yeah. So, and then really for the rest of the league this week, it's fairly thin. There's nothing to discuss about Mississippi. A Blake Shapenless Mississippi State going to Austin. This will be, I think, brutal. Again, good reps for Manning. It's just having this ready because I will say this, Braden. You think, and I'm jumping ahead now, and I know I'm not supposed to, that this would be one of the more conclusive Red River matchups this year. You think, but
you mean lopsided? Yeah.
I just mean you feel very confident about the winner going in, and this is a game where you usually don't feel that way one way or the other.
5-7.
You feel like this would be the year, right?
No, I agree. 5-7. Charlie Strong has beaten like 10-2 Oklahoma championship team. LSU. You mentioned that. Well, LSU, Ole Miss at Arkansas, at A&M, Alabama, which I think you said. That is their next month. The final 3 weeks it lightens up for them. This is their season. Is this next? You beat South Al. This is their season right here. And at A&M and at Arkansas are not easy. Arkansas game has been crazy, rivalry game there. And then Ole Miss and Georgia at home.
You're trying to make them mad. Call the Arkansas a rival.
Isn't the boot's made of gold, right?
When LSU wins the boot, they just leave it on the desk of football secretary, like in the lobby. They don't put it in a case or anything. They don't give a shit about that trophy.
Nobody trolls like LSU. Nobody does. All right, so it sounds like we both like A&M. We both like Oklahoma. We both like Ole Miss big, and it sounds like we're both taking Bama. I don't like how I don't like that I'm doing that, but
I'm not taking. Really, I really wouldn't take credit if Alabama won. Like I knew that was going to happen. It's
a 2-point spread. I think Bama. I think Bama plays very, very well with the home crowd. A couple of X plays from Milroe running around doing something special. I think the first half is all Bama. I think it's like 13-7, 13-6, something like that. First half. I think Bama plays very well. The question is, does Georgia do the Georgia, formerly known as Alabama, thing where they just slowly but surely suffocate the life out of you on defense? They figure you out. They make a couple adjustments. All of a sudden, there's one long drive and a turnover in the second half, and you look up and you're down 17-13. Then they score a late touchdown, and all of a sudden it's 24-13, and you don't feel like you were in the game in the fourth quarter.
If you're Georgia, what you want is to take the blackout hell from 2008 and repeat it. You want the overconfident team going into the situation. I'm serious. You want the overconfident team going in the situation, come in as the road team. They make offensive mistakes early, turn the ball over, and you simply just suffocate them, which is what Kirby likes to do. So I'm not saying it's outside of the realm of possibility. I have no idea what's going to happen in this game, and that's fine.
Bama wins first half, Georgia wins second half. I don't know what that means for the final numbers. That's how I feel about it.
Don't bet on it.
I'm not betting on it at all. All right. Other than that, ML Rose, folks, 6 great locations in Middle Tennessee. If you're visiting or if you live here, we know we have a lot of Nashville audience here. That's a great place to go watch games on Saturday and Sunday. They're big football fans, big football supporters. They got great food and drink specials on Saturdays and Sundays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's right in the viewing window for college football fans. And you can get the SEC. That's right, a sausage, egg, and cheese breakfast sandwich there. They also have chicken and biscuits as well. Mimosas, Bloodies. A big fan of Bloody Marys. So I'm a fan of that. Are you a mimosa guy or a Bloody Mary guy? Because I know you're a bourbon guy at night. Like me.
No, I mean, kind of retired on most of those, but in my prime, I would actually go mimosa.
Are you permanently retired? Like
pretty retired, man. Pretty retired.
Oh, really? Like
not, I know. I mean, just
if I showed up at your house with a bottle of Pappy, are you retired?
Oh, brown liquor? No, I'm the last time I had brown liquor was when the Braves won the World Series.
I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about.
I don't want to talk about it either. I don't want to talk about
my New York Mets. What are you talking about? You guys smoked us on Tuesday night.
Oh yeah, because Atlanta sports are reliable.
But you shouldn't be any good. You've lost all your players. The Mets are the better team. They're the best team in baseball since the beginning of June, and we still are going to go into Atlanta and lose 2 out of 3 and lose the wild card.
Maybe
it's the way the Mets work.
Actually, the way the math tells us we're both making it, and Arizona's free falling.
That might be true.
To be totally honest with you.
That might be true. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to get in that way. I think I'd rather not play in the playoffs. Is that weird? Is that a Mets fan?
No, I don't want to. I am so busy with. I'm like, dude,
I don't have time.
I don't want to watch this team. This team's terrible.
I know. Yeah. Well, I just want Lindor to be healthy so we can actually play with our full team. So we'll see. It's all right.
Now.
It's all right. That's right. Everybody's got to have one. We're going to sign Juan Soto in the offseason. I'm convinced. We're going to sign Alonso. We're going to spend $4 billion of somebody else's money and finally buy ourselves a championship next year. We'll see. First time since I was 4 years old in 1986. All right. Otherwise, enjoy the college football game. Enjoy the college football weekend. Go to ML Rose as well. SplitZoneDuo.com is the website, right? And where can folks find you on the socials?
The big thing to promote is Who Killed College Football, WKCFB.com. And you can find us on Substack too. That's myself and Ryan Nanny launching an anthology narrative miniseries. It's a scripted story about the state of college football. WKCFB.com. You can find me on socials at 38 Godfrey.
WKCFB.
Who killed college football? Support us on Substack.
Rolls right off the tongue. Of course, you have to launch another company with a name that's impossible to pronounce. All right. Thank you for hanging out, my guy. Always a pleasure. Enjoy the weekend. We will talk to you guys next week. Rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up, all that great stuff. Otherwise, have a great one, everybody.